Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Wooley, and I'm the photo professor. So, a little bit about kind of what this is and what we're doing here and how we're hoping to learn. I love sharing information. It's a huge part of who I am and what I do. I've been an educator longer than I've been a photographer. For those of you that don't know, I kind of started out my career as an English teacher and absolutely love sharing information. Like, very, very passionate about it. I did not like the politics in public schools, though. So I quickly found that I'm not going to be able to handle that my entire career. So transitioned out of it to something that was another passion of mine, which was photography. And I was like, okay, I worked through college as a photographer, absolutely loved doing it. And this is like, okay, this is something that I can kind of have as my own, something that I love to do. It's a creative outlet. It can be a great career. And so kind of shifted into the photography realm, but throughout all of this, sharing, hosting workshops, putting on events, just learning, sharing, connecting with the community is really, really strong and a huge part of who I am and what I like to do. And so sharing in the photo world, it's like, okay, I need a little bit of a lens because I was a little bit over here, a little bit over there. Lots of you have been with me for several years as we've gone through like the Let's Develop series that we did with ACI, or workshops or judging, image competitions, photo organizations. I just eat, sleep, and breathe everything photography, and I love it, love it, love it. And so I wanted to put a little bit of a lens so that I've got some focus when it comes to how I present information, how I share, and how I kind of interact with the photography world. So that's where the photo professor came from, is that I took my values and my kind of system or way of viewing images and education and wanted to have that focus that's there. So as we explore images, we can kind of play through that lens and use that as a medium for helping each other learn and grow and supporting each other. So that's what's up with this. And part of being the photo professor persona, I was like, oh, let's do office hours as a fun way of being able to come together, to chat, to learn. We can go over images, we can talk about concept, techniques, things like that. So this is the platform for us to do it, and it's something that I'm hoping will evolve over time. Hopefully with your help and participation and guidance and feedback, we can make this collaborative and something that we get to learn and play together with. So that's kind of the core of what office hours is. I'll be doing it every other week. So every other Wednesday, you'll be able to sign up, come and hang out with this. And I'll email you if you've signed up for it so that you know that it's coming so that we can all join and have fun together. So let's kind of shift gears just a little bit and talk about what that lens was. So when I said that I've got a philosophy when it comes to looking at images, working on images, or critiquing them, I like to think about them in terms of decisions. So as we're going out, and it doesn't matter what the subject is, what our gear is, we as photographers are constantly making decisions. We have to decide, what camera do I need? What setting should I be using? What lens is going to be most appropriate? What's going to be happening with this image after I photograph it? Is it going up on a wall? Is it going into image competition? Is it documenting a memory? What are we doing with this? We have a whole bunch of decisions to make. And so as we're looking at images or as we're crafting the images, we're going to be making those decisions. And I'm a firm believer that the stronger decisions that we make, the better our images are going to be. And so that's kind of the lens or the philosophy that I've got, is all about looking at the decisions that we're making as we go through the image creation, the image retouching, and kind of getting our images out there. What decisions are we making through that? So that's what we're going to be examining as we look at images today and moving forward. It's all going to be through that lens of decision making. So I'm excited about it, and I think it's way more fun to jump in and actually look at what stuff is and look at what those decisions are as we start to learn and grow. So that's kind of what we're doing today and what the overall philosophy is. Don't let me forget, at the very, very end of this, I do have some fun prizes to give away. We've got a guest or two that's on here going to be sharing with us. I see you, Jeff. A little bit of a heads up. Yep. Jeff Johnson, for those that don't know him, he is just a very, very phenomenal and generous man when it comes to supporting our industry and community. Him and Rick Avalos have the Image Critique Show, and where they look at images just like we were going to be doing today, and they provide some really, really unique and heartfelt perspective on it, which I think is what we need a lot. Because when we're looking at images, we get caught up really, really, really heavily in image competition, especially if you're in kind of that PPA ecosystem. We like to enter competitions. We like to say, all right, I'm going up against the best. Here's my images. I crafted this, I've put a lot of thought and intention and heart into it, and I'm entering it into competition. And then we get feedback on images based on that competition. The struggle that I have with that competition-only mindset is that we're looking at it in a very, very narrow perspective. We're looking at something that's going to be up on a 27-inch screen for about 5 seconds. You've got 5 random people that have not seen it before, that have no emotional connection to what your work is. They're going to be looking at that image, and they're going to be judging you and evaluating you on professional standards, the elements from PPA or different criteria, depending on which competition that you're doing. But it's a very, very narrow window. So if it's an image that needs to be bigger than 27 inches to have impact on there, it's not hitting it in competition. If it's something that's evoking emotion, like maybe a family portrait, a pet portrait, something like that, if we're recording memories, like none of that matters when it comes to competition judging. And so I think it's important for us to remember, like, why are we taking these images? It's not only about competition, and the guidelines and criteria that you see in competition is not the only thing that makes an image good or bad. So as we look at the images today, we're going to be evaluating those through different lenses and perspectives. Some of you have been very generous and have submitted images for us to go over today so we can kind of talk about them. And I did ask for a very short idea of what they were going for, their intention behind creating that image. So before we start critiquing those, I'm going to jump in and share my screen. And we have a nice picture of a zebra here that I took down in Arizona. Your neck of the woods there, Jim. And this was something just kind of fun walking through with my wife, and I had a camera with me. And it's like, okay, going to get some portraits of some animals that are out here. So I thought that would be kind of fun. And I want to show you what the decision-making process goes through as we're looking at and evaluating images. How do we decide what to do? How much editing is enough? How much is not enough? And what's that process look like? So I think it's way easier to actually see some of this stuff happening. So we're going to kind of dive in, start looking at this. If anybody does have questions, feel free to put them into chat or to unmute. It's kind of nice that we're in the Zoom format so we can all share and grow and learn together. So looking at this, it's nothing special. Looking at this image, it's very much looks like a snapshot, right? We've got kind of an overexposed area in this background here. Totally shot, nothing super interesting. The zebra's not doing much when it comes to it. It's got some cool lines, and zebras are just really, really fun looking in general. So kind of fun just the fact that it is a zebra, and it's exciting because I don't get to see them every day. But it's nothing that I'd necessarily want to put up on my wall or enter into competitions or anything. But I want to show you how we can look at this stuff and actually find the image within the image now that we've gone and taken it. So this was something I didn't have necessarily a purpose for it besides think it was kind of cool, and it was something that my wife and I could do when we were visiting the zoo in Phoenix. So first thing I want to do is start looking at the crop. Where's the image within this image, and what is holding it back? What's distracting it, and what's kind of taking away the main impact? So I'm just going to pull up this crop tool here in Photoshop. So I just hit the crop button, and kind of a little bit of a tip. If you do see a crop and you're like, oh no, it's applied, that's up here. On this top toolbar, we can come up here and we can just switch it back to like original ratio. And if you have numbers or a particular ratio already put up, that clear button will get rid of it all. So I find this very helpful just to start with a clear slate, not necessarily trying to play into specific 8:10 or 11:14 or 2:3 ratios. Let the image speak. Tell me what it needs. We can print it any size. Custom printing, it's totally there. So we've got some flexibility. Don't feel limited by just that one perspective. So that single crop. So when I'm looking at it, this top part, definitely not doing anything for this image. I might be able to recover it a little bit because I shot in RAW, but even if it was there, it's not really going to help me. So let's start cropping it, taking it out. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to take down that first part. It's not so bright. It's out of our way. So we can see it's kind of shadowed up. Still not a whole lot here. There's not really a good way to salvage that hairline that's on there. So I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive in this crop and come way, way down in here. Say, okay, let's get rid of some of that stuff. This bottom part, not helping us either. But I do have something kind of visually interesting here with the face of the zebra and all these stripes. So we've got some nice design elements with repetition that's coming through. So I do want to play into that element and maybe draw some more focus to it. So I'm going to crop up. So we have almost like a really, really extreme panorama that's coming through. It's getting a little bit more interesting. We've cut out most of the background that has stuff that's kind of boring. I'm going to take in this extra edge. We don't need that much butt room. Let's bring it in. A little bit of tail's kind of awkward there. Let's keep going. Let's bring it into the leg. Coming up here, I've got A little bit of a gap there, kind of pulls your attention away from it. Let's keep coming in. These are decisions that I'm making every time. I'm just saying, okay, let's start cropping out stuff that's not helping the image, stuff that's not going to be as effective. I'm going to come in just a little bit. Now we're into that main element there. Let's come up the other way on that other side, coming in. And now I've got something that's starting to look a little bit interesting. It's almost like there's maybe two zebras that are there. Instead of the single one looking in, we've got some really nice line play that's coming up. But the belly's a little bit distracting for me. So I'm just going to rotate this crop ever so gently so I can maybe get rid of a little bit of that belly line right there. Maybe bring it in so that I have a little bit coming in. And we'll bring it in so that the leg's not distracting either. So I've got a really tight and aggressive crop, but I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on this crop. And we could do that. Let me actually turn on my keyboard. And now we've got something that looks a lot more visually interesting, right? From where we started with, I'm going to come back in our history real quick. From we started out here into something that's really, really aggressive crop. It's like, okay, we got some cool design elements. We just cropped out everything that was distracting in this particular image. So right off the bat, pretty cool. So now I'm looking at how do I keep the focus where I want it to be. We've got all these cool vertical lines, and we've got some horizontal lines and some sweeping curves and stuff. Everything's competing. We don't know where to look. There's just so much stuff going on. So when we're doing the retouching, we want to start saying, okay, how do I keep the focus in where I want it? And if I'm looking at the image, I'm going to come up here and just put on a red brush just so we can see. So I know that the eye is going to be a pretty cool area. That's probably where I want to have all that focus coming into this image. I want to be locked in as much as possible coming up there. So when I'm doing whatever retouching that I'm going to do, I want to kind of say, this is my main area. I want to make sure I've got a clear divide there so that doesn't get lost. And I like the shape that's happening here. So these are some main elements that I want to kind of look at. I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer now that we kind of have an idea of what we're going to do. And let's look at how this crop is coming one more time. So I'm just going to bring this up and say, you know what, maybe the eye being center isn't exactly what I want to do. Let's see if we can get that towards that third mark. Just be a little bit more. Yep. And I'll bring this one down just a hair to help kind of keep that eye on that 1/3 level. So this crop helps it just a little bit more. So we're just getting that eye in kind of a power position. So just a minor tweak to help give us something that we can lock in on. We know the rule of thirds. It's a kind of a gold standard starting point, not necessarily the be-all, end-all of everything, but a really good starting point for saying, hey, this is somewhere that we're kind of naturally look. So now I'm looking at it, and I've got some really, really bright areas over here. I've got some really high contrast areas on this side. I need to start directing how we're going to be looking at this image. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. And that's just Control-J that'll duplicate that. And actually, I'm going to crop that one before I do it, just so that I'm not playing with the full image. Okay, so I've got my duplicate layer that's up here. We can see in that layers palette. And I'm going to open up Camera Raw, just so we can play around. What I love about Camera Raw, as we're doing some of these changes or evaluation things, is that we can start playing with multiple adjustment layers at the same time. That means that if I want to stack color and contrast or tonal things, I can do that all in one screen, all on one image. I don't have to apply them one at a time. I find that to be really, really helpful. So when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing that we've got a lot of really bright colors. And if I see this histogram up here, I'm hitting my whites pretty close. My blacks are getting pretty close. I'm not at the full extreme on those ones, but it's a lot going on. So let's see if we can kind of reduce some of that contrast. And I'm going to come down here to lighting, and let's see if we can just flatten this out just a little bit. I'll take maybe this contrast. Notice how we're pushing these towards the middle. And you know what? Those highlights, let's bring them way down. I'm not afraid to go heavy on this one. I'm just experimenting and looking, seeing what the image needs or what it can tell me to do. Let's maybe lift up some of those shadows. We're just getting a very, very low contrast image at this point. We'll pull down a little bit of those whites and bump up a little bit of those blacks. So I've got a pretty flat image that's coming here. This is going to be a really, really nice starting point. I'm going to darken that just a little bit and go ahead and hit OK. So if I see the before and after on this now, I went from a really, really high contrast, bright, vibrant, my eye doesn't know where to go, something that's a little bit more muted. So now we can start controlling where our eye is going to go via a mask. So I'm just going to put on a mask here and bring up a nice soft brush. So I'm going to go hardness down here, and let's make it really big. Okay, and I can just paint in with black, because black is going to reveal the layer underneath. So everything I paint in black is going to be this high contrast. And say, I want the attention, the focus kind of up here to this face. So I'm just going to kind of paint that in just a little bit. And look at that. Now I've got a lot of attention coming up to this face area, right? And not so much on the rest of the body. So we just lowered the contrast on the body, pop the contrast a little bit when it's coming to the face that's there. But I'm seeing this jaw is pretty bright. Maybe that's a little bit too bright. So I'm going to go ahead and paint some of that back in with white, just so we don't take that attention away from the face, and a little bit down by the nose so it doesn't pull out. So in this case, now the eye is really, really high contrast that's coming through, and everything else is pretty muted. Now, this is maybe a little bit heavy-handed, so something I like to do is kind of balance it off by reducing the opacity, coming down so it's just like maybe 60-70%, so it's almost there, but not quite as strong or in your face. I was like, okay, a little bit more focus coming on this eye. We got great attention now, and our tonal contrast, this is the area of highest contrast, is right around that eye. Everything else gets a little bit more muted, so your eye's naturally drawn to that area, and then it can explore those design elements. We can pop it just a little bit more. That eye's looking a little bit flat. So I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to do curves because I love curves. And with a kind of cool trick with curves, you don't even have to move the curves up and down to make them brighter or darker. We can just come back to that neutral position. So I'll start over on this one. So we're seeing just nothing coming up here. I'm just going to come curves. And now we can just change the blending mode on a curve. And what's kind of cool is it's like duplicating your layer, but we're just applying that same layer to itself. So I'm going to come down to screen, which is going to lighten stuff up. So just toggling that on and off, it's kind of like we just duplicated that layer and we put it onto screen mode, only we just have it with an adjustment layer. Kind of cool. But look at what it's doing to that eye. Everything else is really bright, but that eye is kind of popping all sorts of pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and invert this mask so that it is not applying. I'm going to hit Control or Command I to do that. So we're back to our original image, like this is turned off entirely. And I'm just going to use a white paintbrush this time because I want to turn that on and just paint that eye. Just get a little bit of a pop that's coming to it. And now that eye is really grabbing us. We got a little bit of color. Everything else is pretty desaturated. We've got a little bit of brightness. Everything else is pretty dark. And then just to make it so it's not overdone, I'm just going to back that up just a little bit. So somewhere 50-60%. So it's just a subtle nod in terms of what we're doing. So kind of the point on here is that we're going through and just making tiny decisions all along the way. We cropped it because the elements that were around it, the environment that it was in, was distracting. We cropped it down quite aggressively until we found that story within the story, which is what we were looking for. We found a way to make the design elements of the zebra really, really pop. This is something that I'd love to enter into competition. It's got a cool aspect, a cool feeling to it, kind of feels fine art. It'd be a really, really neat art piece that could go and hang up really big. So we could do some fun stuff with it now. I probably would not showcase, look at all the stuff that we just did, gonna come back and forth, would probably not showcase this artwork anywhere, but when we did that aggressive crop and had fun with everything else, we could go ahead and play. So quite the change in between those two looks. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying let's look at the decisions that we're making and try to figure out why we're doing them. What could we have changed either during our capture, or can we change when we're doing our retouching? And how does that affect the image? So as we're thinking about stuff, we want to be thinking about those decisions that we're making, because the better the decisions you're going to make, the better your photographs are going to be. So let's actually start looking at images now. This was just kind of a run so we know what we're thinking and how stuff works. So I'm going to jump in. Everybody good, or any questions in chat so far? Nope. All right. We're speechless. I love it.
Good to go.
Yep. All right. So we have an image from Amy here, and she's an intermediate photographer, and this is more for kind of her personal portfolio and kind of documenting what some of the animal behavior is. So that's giving us our lens. How are we viewing this? Is it going into image competition? Is it a fine art piece going up on the wall? Something that's for a personal project, kind of documenting things and also seeing that connection that's there. It's stinking adorable, isn't it? Like, I wish I had taken this image. I just love the giraffes. They're so much fun. And they're really, really cute. And it doesn't look like this one's at a zoo, so it looks like she had an adventure when it went to making this image. So what I'm drawn to, I was playing right there. let me get rid of that one. There we go. What I'm drawn to on this is this really, really strong connection that we have in between these two elements. Like, I just want to be in there. I love that almost kiss moment. It's the mama giraffe and the baby giraffe. We've got a really strong emotional connection that's here. So loving what's happening with that aspect of it. So since we're using this on a personal piece, we have to think about what are we doing with this? Is this something that's sitting in an online portfolio that you're just saying, hey, look at all the cool places I've been, or maybe like a book or an album that we're doing? If so, those are going to be viewed pretty small. So if you're showing people on your phone, if you're going to be having a coffee table book, that sort of thing, we're going to be in a pretty small format. Which means that we want to have a tighter crop, kind of like what's here. So I think her decision to have that tighter crop focusing immediately on that storytelling element was really, really strong. Now, if she's going to be doing this as an art piece in like maybe a hotel lobby, or there was a store or something that we wanted to really feature this on, it could look amazing huge. But if it's going to be really, really big, we need some room, right? This giraffe, if it decided to stand up, its head's going to go out of the frame, right? So it could be a little bit tight in terms of what that composition is if it was going to be printed really, really large. So if we were going to go something big, I'd want to have a lot more headroom that really establishes this base, and the mama's kind of kneeling down and saying hi to the little baby that's there. So the crop, depending on what your intention in, either works really well or isn't working in this image, depending on what that final format is. I think for her uses, she's spot on for how we need to be looking at this image, something that's going to be a smaller portfolio piece. So let's look at the crop that's actually applied. And I'm just going to hit my crop button so we can see it. And I've got kind of my rule of thirds that's overlaid on here. Kind of fun. We can circle through different crop overlays, like you can use the golden ratio, stuff like that. I find rule of thirds to be a pretty good starting point without overcomplicating it or overthinking it. And I can see that I've got this baby giraffe, which is definitely our main focus, that's coming up approximately on that 1/3 mark. Mama's kind of bridging that middle gap that's over there, and we've got a little bit off center for the other one. So our crop, in terms of what we're looking at and how much breathing room we have, is definitely working out. So we're doing nice on that. I'm very, very pleased with what this crop is for something that's a smaller print. I think we're spot on. I know I keep saying that, but I want to stress that one, that it is going well. So let's look at the processing that's happening here. We've got a really cool moment. We don't need to try to find the scene within the scene like we did with the zebras. This one's already doing it for us. So I'm going to be looking at the techniques that have been done during the retouching right now. And we're going to get a little bit picky on this, because that's how we learn, is when we get critical. So what I'm seeing is very, very high contrast. That means that if I look at elements like over here, well, let me get my brush up here so we can kind of point at those things. If I'm looking at elements on the baby giraffe, that's really, really high contrast between those darks and lights that are coming. Whereas on the mama, we're a little bit lower contrast that's coming through, which means that our eye is naturally going to be drawn over here to the baby. So definitely a good thing that we want the baby as kind of our main focus, right? But I'm really loving the kind of harmony, the tonal harmony that's coming from what the mama is. So if we were able to maybe have that medium contrast be over here on baby, we'd have a little bit more of a harmonious look. So that's something that we can evaluate, is just when we're retouching it. I know the babies are naturally going to be higher contrast because they're young and they haven't got all those nice age elements that are coming through like we get when we're getting older. So it's still got that young vibrancy that's coming through. So we could kind of cheat reality just a little bit with that, maybe tone those ones down so we aren't being brought into it quite as much. I'm also seeing that we've got really deep saturated colors. Now, saturation's a little bit of a funky thing. If we're going for online social media likes, doesn't matter if it's a landscape that you've done, a random cell phone picture, anything like that. If you crank up the saturation, it's going to get instant impact. That means that as people are scrolling through, that high vibrancy, really high saturation image is going to stop. It's going to grab attention and be like, whoa, that looks really, really cool. And if we're only viewing it in that short form content, that can work really well of just being eye-catching, right? That's why we like to have vibrant colors, things that stand out, that pop. But when we're looking at a fine art image, which I think this definitely qualifies towards fine art, something that we want to stare at and look at a little bit longer, that really deep saturation can actually hurt us. It can be a little bit gimmicky, where we're trying to throw in some of those BuzzFeed-style headlines, right? Look at me, you won't believe what happens next. We're doing that with color in this case. We're trying to go for the really, really quick win to get somebody to look at it and not necessarily focusing on the long-term impact. So if we were to reduce the saturation on this image just a little bit, it'll kind of allow us to stay mixed within those tones and really, really embrace that storytelling, not getting too caught up on it. So that's something that we can kind of look at. It's just the kind of the colors and the contrasts that are there. I think those two elements would be huge for this image. Looking at the particular edits that the maker chose to do, I am seeing a little bit of kind of glows and halos around the edges. So whatever technique that they used, there's something that's glowing around these. And I'm not sure if it's a blurring to help make it not as distracting, or if it's a mask that got a little bit out of hand. But that is a slight inconsistency that's coming across there. That goes more on kind of the technical excellence or the technique aspect. Now, the fact that Amy's an intermediate photographer, this is totally within the realm of be very, very proud. Be very proud of what you've done on here. If we were going to go up into a professional standard, I'd definitely be a lot more critical of that, but with a personal use and an intermediate skill level, I think the maker has done an absolutely fantastic job of putting this together. Last thing I'm going to be kind of hitting up on this one before I move on to the next one is how bright this upper sky level is. So it is really, really bright back there, and it can be kind of cool if we want that clean separation and definition. But it does take us a little bit out of key for what the rest of the image is. We're kind of a mid key for everything that's here, yet this very top quarter of the image is really bright. That puts this as a really high contrast area all along here, instead of being down where our emotional moment is. So if we had a sky that we were able to, say, drop in or change some of our settings, or time of day that we're doing, any of those things would be absolutely fantastic for trying to bring a little bit more tonal harmony into the image. So if that sky were just brought down a little bit, maybe at sunset, so we had some of those beautiful golden tones coming through, absolutely gorgeous. Now, we probably, going out on a safari like this, couldn't really control when we were going to see this moment, right? And so we do have to work within the limitations of what we have and what our final output is. If this is going to be something that's going up on my wall, I'd love to replace that with a different sky that just kind of harmonizes with the rest of the image. If this was going into image competition, though, you might not be able to do that, especially if it's a wildlife category. Entering like World Photographic Cup or IPC, that might be a no-no. So you have to kind of evaluate depending on what the terms are. But if we were going to go up on the wall, I'd definitely do something on that sky just to keep that focus locked in on our image. All right, up next we got an image from Sarah, and this one is If Vegetables Could Speak. So Sarah's a professional, and this one was kind of a nod to Edward Weston. So we're looking at a bell pepper, I'm assuming, and we're doing a study on light and form. For those of you that haven't studied Ed Weston stuff, you're in for a treat because holy cow, that man spent some serious time figuring out exactly what was going on and has some of the most beautiful still lifes that are there. Every time I'm at the grocery store, I'm always looking at the strange peppers or how cool would that be to try to do some neat lighting with it, just finding interesting forms and textures. And that's kind of the underlying thing that we're looking at, especially with Ed Weston or anytime that we're doing a study of this, is that we want to evaluate the forms, the structure, those artistic elements that are brought into the image. So let's look at this image of Sarah's. And we're looking at, I'm assuming, is the inside of a bell pepper, and we can see some of the seeds, we can see some of the pith that's on the inside. We've got some really strong colors that are there, and she's got a competition presentation that's going on with that really deep dark black. So I'm looking at the image, we've got a lot going on, and our eye is naturally going to be drawn to the area of highest contrast. I'm going to switch it from red to green so we can see this. So this area that we're at right here, our eye is just drawn to because we have whites up against blacks. We've got some interesting forms, so we're really, really drawn to this particular area. A little bit competing for that, we have an area that has little texture when everything else has a kind of an extreme grunge that's coming throughout all of this area around here. So we've got a little bit of a texture contrast as well, which means that this general area is what's kind of holding us into this image. But I think there's some kind of fun things that are happening here. I do find that the saturation is really, really high. We've got some really intense reds that are coming through this image. I think it holds it back just a little bit. If I pull up the histograms, we can see my histograms up here, and we look at those reds. Look at that. We're blowing out those red channels. So we've got our red, green, and blue channels, right? We're used to being saying, okay, I'm blowing my highlights on an image, but did you know you can blow a particular particular color channel as well. In this case, it'd be like taking our reds, and that one's cranked up past 100. We have no additional detail that's on there, so everything just blocks up into a pure red. And we can see that, get this little warning sign that's up here, and that red is going up really high. Our midtones are pretty flat, meaning that we don't have a lot of stuff happening in those midtones, and we get really deep and contrasty on that blacks. So in blue in this case is where we're hitting this kind of black middle line as well as the presentation that's coming through. So we've got a very, very high contrast image that's coming throughout. So the color channel that's being blown there is a little bit misleading, it does pull your eye away. So I'm just going to throw a black and white filter onto this just so that we can take away colors as we're looking at it. And now I'm only looking at tone, right? So we have our black and white elements, and the image massively changes how we look at it and how we're feeling about it based on that color being there or not. Without the color here, I can see a little bit more of the design elements. We've got some really cool sweeping lines that come through here. Some fun stuff that's there. We've got some really neat texture that's coming up here with where these seeds are just kind of popping through. So this might be something that's kind of fun to experiment with. And that's just converting it to black and white just gives us that little bit of insight in terms of what's happening. So if we were to say pull back some of those reds, I can also take this and just reduce the opacity. This is one of my favorite techniques if you do want to lower the overall saturation of an image, is to throw a black and white filter on, and then we can just reduce the opacity. It's going to give us that desaturated image, but we've got it on a sliding scale, so we can go and change it at any point in time. And the kind of cool thing, if you are using black and white ones, is that we can pick specific color channels and we can make those darker or lighter. So if we say, you know what, I want to make some of those reds a little bit darker, we can take that red channel, come through, and continue to play with our opacity so we find that moment that we really, really like. So something that's a little bit deeper, we have now kind of a natural vignette. We aren't blowing out channels. If I'm looking up here, look at our reds. We just cleared those all out by darkening what that red channel was and taking away that little polish that's there. The blacks are totally expected to be here because we have a pure black matte. So not something that I'm surprised to see at all. Now, the maker chose to have something that's a kind of a deep, gritty feel to it. So it's got almost like a grunge overlay that's happening. And when we're looking at a line or a form study, that contradicts just a little bit. We're kind of butting heads just a little bit there. Instead of playing with all this form, shape, shadows, and highlights, we're starting to have some of that texture come in and dominate where our eye's going. So our eyes are coming into this upper area right up here. Nope, I'm getting a new layer. Upper area right here, instead of embracing where those fun, smooth, flowing lines are at. So as we're looking at that, might say, okay, maybe I can reduce some of that micro contrast or texture, clarity. Those are all kind of doing that same thing. Those ones, they're adding in all this texture that keeps us kind of locked in and focused up there versus having something a little bit softer. So now as we're kind of looking at this image and say, okay, maybe we can go back to a raw file on it and just not have that texture quite as gritty, because we can play with the overall texture of the image. So the contrast that's coming there on those beautiful curves and tones versus getting caught up in the small, small details that are there. So something for us to think about. I don't have the original raw file on there, but it could be kind of fun to play with. What I can do is put this into a stamped layer and open us up in Camera Raw Filter and kind of look at some of that. So if we were coming up here to the effects, right now, like I'm guessing that we had something like texture kind of come up to really pull out that micro contrast that was there. I'm not exactly sure which technique was used for this, but we can kind of cheat it by just taking it and pulling down that texture in the opposite direction. And it'll kind of help us kind of smooth out some of that. So the way that the texture effects work inside of like Lightroom and Photoshop is that these are kind of stacked up. So texture is going to be the lightest element. Clarity gets a little bit heavier, and dehaze gets even heavier on that. So if you want it to be kind of a medium one, we can take down the clarity, which still preserves some of that contrast, but takes out those bigger chunks. So I'm going to go ahead and do that just a little bit. And this is a fun technique. Jeff, I think I picked this one up from you, where we lower the clarity and pump up the texture just a little bit, and that gives this almost blooming glow that can be just absolutely gorgeous on landscapes and images. I absolutely love that one. I took a workshop with Jeff in the Olympic Peninsula one time, and holy cow, I walked away with so many notes on just random tidbits out of that man's brain. I love it. So we've got something that's coming here just to play away that texture, making it so it's not quite as focused. That's coming in on that area. Something else I might like to see is a lightening of this dark area. I'm just going to pop over here to this lightning tab and say, you know what, let's take these shadowed areas and kind of bump them up just a little bit. Look at that cool texture that's hiding in there. That might be something for us to play with or examine or evaluate. That could be kind of fun area. Look at that. And I'll bump up the blacks just a little bit and pull down some of these highlights so we're getting more of these mid-tones coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And here's that kind of before and after that we are looking at here. We got a little bit more texture, and we're playing on some of the form and shape that's coming through. This is heavy-handed, but I love doing camera raw because we can always do these effects so they look good and then just back it off so it doesn't look overcooked. So we're coming here. I'm going to take that down to 50, 60% and say, hey, we've got something that's a little bit more visually interesting here. This one, it just kind of oversaturates us. When we come up and start showing the entire image now, we're playing with a little bit more of that form and shape. So now looking at how this might be used, if this is going to be entering into competition where we have that instant impact, I think that we're going to have a little bit of a challenge. The judges aren't necessarily going to know exactly what we're looking at, that this is a figure study that we're looking on it. We're going to be looking at that micro contrast and trying to determine, like, what's the subject? What's the feeling that I want there? The emotion, the grittiness, and the rawness could be really cool as a statement piece. I'd love to see maybe a little bit different lighting on this image. So going back to creation versus what can we do during the retouching process and say, hey, maybe I can back up or play with strong dominant lines that are coming through, maybe show a little bit more of the scene or the atmosphere, get a story element that's coming on it. Right now, we do feel very, very centered on this center element, so it has kind of a bullseye feel to it. So something to consider as we're going through there. All right, so let's take a peek at our next image. And we've got an image here from Erica, and she is a professional and wanted to know if this would be a good candidate for IPC, the International Photographic Competition. And so we look at this image and you can't help but smile. Like, we've got this really, really cute dog that's coming up here. It's Maybelline. I don't know. Cute pup. We've got some amazing framing that's going on. Anytime that we can have a frame within the element, I'm a sucker for it. It tells you exactly where to look. We've got tonal contrast from these mid-tones that are back here. The dog is popping really, really nicely. We've got color contrast, our warm subject and foreground, and we've got a cooler background. So we've got some kind of fun things that are happening with it. So she's specifically asking for competition versus being up on like your home wall or for a client's album, things like that. If we were looking at it for something that's going to be for personal use, so something that's going to be like up on your client's walls or a portfolio piece that's on there, I think this is really, really strong exactly as it is. We've got all that right contrast. You're looking at it, you're being brought exactly into where our subject is. If I was this dog owner, I would absolutely love it, and I would be showing it off. The maker has done some amazing things for pulling our attention in exactly where we need it, and you just smile looking at it. You can't help but smile. You know you're doing something right if you're looking at an image and you're just smiling from ear to ear with it, right? So if we're doing for that home use, I think we're completely set for this image. I would love to have this as maybe like a 24 by 36 print hanging up. It would look good. I love the texture that we have going on to it. But we're looking at it through IPC, so through our judging lenses that are coming up here. So that means we have those 12 elements that we're going to be evaluating. We're going to be getting really, really critical in some of the technical aspects of it. So we're shifting the lenses, which means our decision making has to shift. So first thing that I'm seeing is that we've got a lot of design elements that are coming through. Our primary subject or our center of interest, there's no question about it. We know it's the pup, and the pup is awesome. So we've got that one kind of checked off. We're reinforcing that with this beautiful frame that's coming through. But we do have a lot of horizontal lines and a lot of vertical lines that are cutting through this image. And so that does add some nice visual texture to it, but it does compete a little bit too. So our bottom part has a lot of weight. This curb that the dog's sitting up against, I'm not exactly sure what it is that's there, but it is a very, very light element that's just as light as what our subject is that weights that image visually coming down. We also get in pretty tight in terms of our top crop, so we don't have a lot of space to move around inside that image. So we are pretty tight, pretty focused on it. Awesome for wall art, but when we're looking at our competition images that are going to be on our screen, maybe just a little bit bigger than that, maybe coming up about this size, it can start to feel a little bit tight. So what I'd love is maybe a tiny crop coming off the bottom of this, just so we don't have quite as much weight on that bottom. And if we had just a little bit more, maybe on a raw image or a pullout where we can come up just a teeny tiny bit more, it'll help it feel like the dog's not exactly bullseye center on the image. So that bullseye aspect could work if we had a very symmetrical dog, but this dog is lying horizontally on there, which means that we kind of go into that landscape aspect of it. So giving that little bit of breathing room just on top and grounding it a little bit more on the bottom gives it kind of a sense of atmosphere that we're looking at with it. Getting, again, pretty nitpicky on things, but as I'm looking at the bottom of this element, there are some kind of things that draw my attention down at that bottom. Like that line's not perfectly sharp. There's a little bit of fuzziness that are coming maybe from the brick wall. Maybe there's a rock that's there. I'm not exactly sure if that's part of the original capture or if that's been something that's done during the retouching, but it does pull my eye down and it's keeping me out of the focus of our primary subject. So I'd love for this to be a little bit of a cleaner line that kind of matches the natural fall off that we see when looking at the rest of the pup, just so that we aren't being pulled down into the image. The judges almost instantly are going to be looking and saying, okay, are these lines straight? And we do have a little bit of perspective shift, but if we take, say, like our rulers down from the top, you can hit Control or Command R in Photoshop too to bring up these guidelines that are up here. That's our rulers so that we can pull down these. And I can see that like her lines, they're looking sharp and straight. So if we run it along the bottom, we can see that she's already got our perspective that's hitting across this image. So we're in good shape in terms of what those horizontal lines are. So we should have to see, does it feel weighted? Does it feel like it's going to be tilting, or do we have a slight perspective shift that's happening inside the image? And it feels like we might have something, maybe the wall's at a slight angle or she's at a slight angle from it. Even though our lines are perfectly straight across, it does make us kind of look at that element a little bit more, especially when we're getting kind of critical. And when we start evaluating those types of elements inside of an image, we're looking for technical flaws. We're looking for things that are pulling us out of the image. So we're starting to analyze it or putting on that sleuthing mindset a little bit more. If we had a little bit less contrast or didn't have as pronounced brick pattern that was back there, so finding another spot, I don't know if it still have our same beautiful circle that's there, could make it so we aren't getting caught up in those details as much. For the wall piece, I definitely love having that texture there, but it is a little bit distracting. Along those same lines, when we're looking for some of those things, I do have a slight kind of glow that's coming on this side, and it feels like this overall side is a little bit brighter. And maybe that's a piece of sun that's coming through and just lighting the wall a little bit differently. Maybe it's a mask that got blurred out a little bit too much. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening there, but it does pull attention away, especially when it is kind of a contrasty area. Other thing that I'm seeing is that we've got a lot of light spots that are down here that are kind of competing against our primary cute face that's happening here. And so we might consider pulling down some of the highlights just a little bit, kind of flattening out this image so that we can keep that focus coming up on the face. And so what that might look like, I'm going to duplicate this real quick and pull this into Camera Raw. And let's just pull down some of those highlights. So I'm going to take this down pretty aggressively and say, let's kind of lower some of that, maybe lift up some of those shadows just a hair, some of our blacks just a little bit, and darken it just a teeny tiny bit. Didn't do much on this one, so just that little bit kind of pulls down some of those tones. And now we want to be focusing on that face. So let's create a mask and let's paint that face in. And I'm just going to get a nice soft brush here, and we're just going to kind of do a couple of clicks where we want that attention and focus to be. Bam, look at that. We're brought right into our center of that subject. The whites don't feel like they're blown. We're not feeling like we're missing out on texture. Everything feels a little bit more harmonized. We're going towards that mid-tones, and then that area of highest contrast for those eyes and that white fur is just pulling us in. And of course, if that's too heavy-handed, back it off just a little teeny tiny bit. So, coming back to our main question on this, would this be a good entry for IPC? If it were me, I would totally merit this image. I think that it's got really nice potential, some really strong design elements that's coming through. It's popping, it looks cute, it looks like it's at professional standards, only minor tweaks when it comes to entering it in. But IPC isn't going for our merit, no merit category. We're going in or out on this element. Are we going to win the highest rankings? Are we going to get to that platinum setting? How is it going to fare against others on it? And I think that this one has a lot of initial impact and some major cuteness that are on there. But as we start investigating some of those smaller details, we miss out on a little bit of the storytelling. We start to feel a little bit cramped as presented with it. So I think if we could either introduce another element into the image that aids that storytelling, tells us why she's there, what she's doing, what's happening, a little bit more about her personality, that could be a really cool thing that gives it that next level, that next push that's there. So really strong image in my book. I don't know if it would go and win all of everything for IPC, but I think it would definitely be worth entering. And if we're entering into merits, it's there for me. All right. Up next, we've got Out on a Limb. And this one is by Joni. And we're just looking for a critique on this image. Because it's got a presentation that's on here, I'm assuming that we're going to be entering it into an image competition. And so we're going to be looking at all these elements. So right off the bat, I'm seeing that we've got a really cool interaction between these two birds. Like, that is just all sorts of fun. I love these beautiful, almost pastel colors. It feels so natural. We've got nice texture that's coming through, from the texture on the tree to the feathers of the birds. So our capture was actually really, really nice. I'm not sure what entirely was done for what that the capture was, but it doesn't feel overly compressed. It doesn't feel like we're too much of the scene that's coming in there. We've got a cool moment between these. We've got some nice lighting direction. We have our primary bird and we have a secondary bird. Adding some stuff up. So really cool moment of capture, and the lens choice, absolutely fantastic for it. It is challenging photographing birds. Those of you that do know that we are often having to use extreme telephoto lenses, have really, really fast shutter speeds that are there, and you're still going to end up with a ton of noise that's coming into the image. It's kind of par for the course, right? This one's been cleaned up really, really well. So when I'm looking at it, I'm going to pull up these histograms, and I can see that I've got lots of stuff really, really heavy in the kind of light area, and we've got really flat everywhere else, with some little bits coming up into those darker areas. So we can start pulling focus into our primary elements and seeing what's distracting. So as I'm looking at it, if I say, okay, this is the interaction that I love, is these birds that are right here. They're really cool. Things that are going to be distracting for me, everything that's happening up here, that's competing. It's pulling attention away from what our primary subject is. The tail area, really wish this bird was just over, or the branch was out just a little bit, because we're missing some of that tail that's coming behind that branch. And it's like, no! Obviously, we can't go up and be like, hey, Mr. Birdie, can you move over just a little bit? The birds don't listen to me, or I don't speak it well enough, if that's the case. So that merger is a little bit unfortunate, because it does add a lot of heavy weight here, and we miss out on the really cool tail that could be down. If we had another image that could maybe be a composite where we could add in some of that tail coming forward, that would be really cool. If we had maybe some Photoshop skills and we're okay using something generative, we could get rid of that really easily and kind of pull that up to the front. But let's look at what we can do on this. I'm going to crop out where our presentation is. Presentation does feel a bit heavy, meaning that we've got lots of space that's all around. The presentation takes up more visual weight than what our primary subject is. So I'm going to go ahead and crop in on this just a little bit so that we can get into where the story is and really start investigating the decisions when it comes to our primary image without that presentation. So got image that's coming up here, and we're going to throw our crop tool up over again, and we say, you know what, this is kind of the area where our story is. This isn't really helping us a ton for that message. This is a little bit distracting. I like that it's got kind of a fun leading line that leads us into it, but it also leads us out of the image. So this might be something that we can remove depending on the category that you're entering for competition, since I'm assuming this was competition driven. So I'm going to go ahead and imagine that this isn't as much of an issue for us, and I really want to stay focused on this storytelling here. So I'm going to bring up this bottom crop just a little bit so we can start to get our birds coming in and our top part coming in just a little bit. So we've got a little bit more of a panorama that's coming through our images. Now this is being cut off, which kind of sucks, but we can take that out if we want to use like the remove tool or spot healing and come up and say, okay, all that's gone. We got a tailless bird now, right? That doesn't work out quite so well. Like tailless birds just don't work. So we could use maybe like a generative tool, depending on what we're doing with this. Not using it in competition, but do something we can say like remove branch. So I can put in those things and we can generate a whole new tail. We'll see what that one does. It's always exciting doing stuff live, right? So it's like, okay, if we had maybe from another image, something that we could move over where you're not using generative, but this would be kind of a cool way of doing that. I'm going to go ahead and knock out this branch just for the sake of looking at what this image does and pull out this area up here just because it's competing for attention from our bird. So that's all gone now. Our subject's right in here. I think we could probably even tighten this crop up just a little bit. I'm going to pull up from that bottom just a hair. So we've got kind of a nice panoramic feeling going on. We're not smashing the bird too much. We've got some great storytelling, and we're only focusing on that subject. So next thing I'm looking at is how deep and heavy some of these shadows are. We've got a really light sky background with some subtle texture, which I just love. It's beautiful. And some great colors that are coming through, almost this pastel. Yet the branch is really dark. It pulls attention away from where our primary subjects are. I'm going to create a new stamped layer and open up Camera Raw so we can play around again a little bit. And let's just say, let's lighten up those shadows. So I'm going to take this shadow slider and crank it. Look what happens when we do that. The birds become more pastel. We're starting to get some beautiful colors coming through. Might lighten up those blacks just a little bit so we aren't going into that dark, harsh terms there. And let's pull out those highlights just a little bit so we still maintain some texture that's coming through. So I'm not going to do a ton, but just that little bit of a pop. Look how much more of these birds come alive now. So we aren't getting that heavy weight that's there. We've got some softness that's coming up. You could keep that with the branch and with the tail if you did want to keep that as part of your story. I'm just kind of playing around and seeing what elements bring us into this image. And I think something with that nice light element kind of pops us. Here's the before and the after with that crop. Kind of fun seeing this. For me, it has a lot more impact when we have that lighter, same key where we're that soft, that light element that's coming through. So something that I think can work really well. I'd say this image definitely has some strong potential. If you have another one where we can have an actual tail that's on here, you'd be really nice for being able to enter into competition because we don't want to use this generative element. I was just using it for the illustrative purposes that are on there. So if you need to leave the tail, you can do that one on it. Okay, going to look at one more, and then we'll transition to some prizes and stuff, because we're coming up to our hour. It's hard to believe it's coming up already. So we've got the Dawn Dance, and this one's from Elizabeth, and she's an intermediate photographer, and just kind of focusing on the mating display that's coming here. So, wow, this is really cool, especially for the intermediate skill level. We've got a really strong element, no question in terms of what we should be looking at, what the storytelling's happening here. I really appreciate that the crop doesn't feel too tight. It's very tempting to come in and say, this is what my subject is. I'm going to crop in really tight on it. And that's what I need to be focusing on. Like, we want to fill that frame, right? No, by giving just a little bit of room for this bird to kind of breathe into it, it feels like it's going somewhere. And this is the Dawn Dance during mating season that's coming through. We got that full plumage that's there. So we get that storytelling. We imagine out of frame over there, there's that hot female bird that's over there, and he's doing his wooing that's up here. So we've got some really nice elements that are coming there. I do appreciate that we have a muted palette that's coming through. So we've got some nice kind of soft world that's up here, really low contrast. Our primary subject's popping, that little bit of highlight that's coming up, definitely working for this image. So now let's get a little bit more critical on it. And this is going to come up to the retouching. And I get to pixel peep on here, and I can see that, oh no, we photographed a bird and it had noise that's on it. That's going to happen almost every time that we're doing wildlife photography. We just can't get a low enough ISO and still keep things sharp. So this one, during the retouching process, we have texture and noise and grain that's on the bird, but the background is entirely smooth. I don't know if we can see it. I'm zooming up a ton that's on there. Maybe you guys can see it now at this point that, like, in between the beak, we get that grain that's happening. Everywhere else is not. So when we're coming and looking at the retouching decisions, we can see that those elements are starting to come back. So those technical things are holding us back just a little bit, although I like the direction and the overall feeling. If we had a slightly better refinement that came through, we can get that a lot cleaner. So just looking at how we're extracting the image, how we're going to be applying that denoising effect to it can definitely help us so that we've got that nice, clean aspect that's coming through. That's going to be the main one I'm looking at. Next one is our really, really heavy bottom black that's up here. So this area is very heavy weighted. This is kind of the main element that we want to be focusing on the image. And we've got this really heavy spot that's kind of pulling us down, and we don't really have anywhere else to go with it. So if we had a way of keeping that focus and contrast up here, but maybe lightening up down here so we aren't brought into it, that would really, really help pull that image. So I can duplicate it, and we're just going to experiment in Camera Raw again. And I can play with these shadows, just kind of lightening them up. I'm only really concerned about what's happening here. Maybe this black just a hair. And say, okay. So this one just lightened that up. It lightened everything. So it does feel a little bit HDR-ish, which I dislike. But we can start now selectively painting in. I'm going to create an inverted mask. And you can do that by holding Alt or Option as you hit the mask key. And it'll create a blank mask or black mask that has everything already filled in. So now we can switch to a white paintbrush and just paint in that area that we want to reduce contrast in. Say, you know what? This area doesn't need to be quite as bright, a little bit by the butt. Doesn't take much, just that little bit that's there. Maybe lighten up right there. So we got that nice. Here's a before and after. A little bit just gives us some of that texture without pulling down that heavy weight to it. And if it's too strong, just pull that back just a little teeny tiny bit. So doesn't have to be over the top, but overall, I think the maker did a really nice job on getting this all together and kind of having fun. All right, so those are the images that I've got for today. Do have some kind of fun prizes, giveaways, and things that we want to do. We were talking about critiques, and the cool thing about critiques is that we've got different opinions, different perspectives that are coming through with it. How I view an image is going to be completely different from how another judge might be viewing an image, how a different maker might be viewing an image, or somebody in a different medium or format might be doing that. I think it's really important that we look at images and we look at them from a variety of perspectives. Just because something works in my book doesn't mean that it's the only answer or even the best answer. It just means that that works for me and how my brain works and what I connect with. So we've got Jeff Johnson that's here. I want to put him on the spot for just a second. But Jeff is a really, really good friend. We've had so many conversations about images and critiques in the industry on things. And him and Rick have the Image Critique Show. I'm going to pull up that slide real quick. Got Image Critique Show. See, I even got his face that's up here. I stole that from your website. So they have a really, really cool webinar series where they go through and they have different jurors come in and they just talk about images. They look at them. They analyze them. Do you want to tell us about that for just a second, Jeff?
Absolutely. Thanks for this opportunity. I think what you're doing is very good. And I think this kind of thing is what's really going to be a lot more help for folks these days. It's a lot more visual. We get wonderful audio critiques, but this is really going to help, I think, folks just get a better picture, obviously, since we're more visual than just the audio. So what we're doing is once a month, it's been the fourth Thursday of each month. We run a couple-hour show live. Rick and I, who've been in this industry for longer than we care to tell you, almost 100 years, we've got each month we bring in a guest, and who's usually a very talented, longtime judge and juror and speaker and so on like that. So we just bring up people submit images, and we will kind of do similar to what you're doing, but we get a little bit rougher. We get a little bit more. We cut some stuff apart and recrop it, but it's all in good. It's a
learning experience.
Yep. It's a learning experience, and we also it's open ground, so anybody can jump in and ask questions about their image or other images. So it's definitely very much a community-minded thing. Kevin Holliday is on the show with us here in the screen. He's going to become one of our new hosts this year. Olin Jones is also on. He's kind of one of our planners. So we've got it's quite a team that we have, and we want to invite you to join. The next show is coming up on Thursday night next week, and it's going to be, this is a little different. We're presenting some work that is, you probably have all seen it over the years, some very famous pieces. We're going to get brave and talk about why it works and maybe why it doesn't work. And then, of course, as you know, it's all personal preference too. So But that's just some of the fun stuff we're doing. Chris, thanks for letting me have a chance to talk to you. But definitely check us out, theimagecritiqueshow.com. If you go to YouTube and look us up, you can look at some of our past programs and what we're doing, get an idea. You can sit and watch it. There's no charge to do that. If you want to submit an image on the website, you'll see we've got a couple different, very, very inexpensive, or I should say very reasonable rates to submit an image and get a good feedback. I mean, we'll take images and recrop it, and then of course on Zoom we can color in, and we have different pens, and we just have a blast. Maybe at your expense, I don't know, but it's a lot of fun. So check us out. It's all about helping. It's all about, as again, Rick and I have been doing this for seriously 100 years. We both were raised in the business, so we had a lot of good information from our dads and from people they knew. We're just trying to share that and help all of you. Not just necessarily to become master of photography, which obviously is a great goal, but it allows you to look at photography in a different way. Kevin has come to us. He's been a dear friend of ours for quite a while, but he's kind of been a little bit in the PPA world, but he comes from another different point of view, and I think that's going to be extremely helpful for you. So we talk about PPA, we talk about the rules, not so much if they're right or wrong, but there's another perspective that I think is going to help you just become better photographers. So that's what we're all about. So please join us. Please check us out and holler at us if you have any thoughts or ideas for programming and such like that. So thanks for the time, Chris. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll in the follow-up email with the replay on this, I'll also shoot out links to the Image Critique Show. Highly, highly recommend checking that one out. So much great information that's there, just learning. And Jeff has agreed to let us have an image into the Image Critique Show as one of the prizes for today. So really cool and very, very generous of him to do that. So we're going to pop over and I've got on my website here under the resources section, some of you may have already found, so you can come up here to resources or hit the resources button that's on here, an image critique GPT. So this is something that I put together. It's based off of ChatGPT, and it has my philosophy when it comes to looking at images. So it's a completely free thing that you can do, and essentially you just upload an image, it'll give you a score and give you feedback that you can work on for improving your image. So it is a robot that's there. There's been about 1,000 photographers that have used it so far, so kind of cool. I've been getting all sorts of great feedback on it, and I'm continuing to hone it and improve it, try to be a little bit more accurate on there. But it is another perspective, another tool that you can do when you're working images or trying to find things together. So definitely check that out. Other thing that I wanted to show you that's also on this resources page is I'm a working photographer, and that's how I make my money in the industry, is doing that. I hate subscriptions on things. So I developed a piece of software for doing sales, and it's called IPS Viewer Lite. You guys are getting the very first glimpse at it right here. And basically, it's a way of doing sales. So everything from slideshows, recording orders, things like that. But the big important thing on it is that it is subscription free. So you buy it once, you own it. You can keep on using it. You can keep on doing sales as your studio changes names. As you grow as a photographer, you can keep on doing that. So you can see that under the resources tab, or go to viewips.com if you are interested in seeing that. And because this is the debut, if anybody's interested, and give you $60 off if you use the code VIP60. I'll put that in the follow-up email as well. So normally $189, so you'd be able to get $60 off of that, or about a third off as part of this launch that's on there. And again, no subscriptions or anything that's on there. I hate subscriptions. I got frustrated with subscriptions and things stopping working after I paid for them. So that's why I built this. So kind of a fun tool, but wanted to tell you about that. So last thing I have, and a couple more prizes to give away. We're going to come back on here. So I'm going to be the image competition jury chair for Professional Photographers of Washington. And they have agreed, my wife's the image competition chair on here, agreed to give away an entry to that one. So if you've got an image and you're just dying to test it out, get some feedback and stuff on there, you've got a competition entry to PPW. So we're going to come back and give away. Cool. Well, congratulations, everybody, on that. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging with me as we learn, as we had office hours and kind of looked at images and the decisions behind them. This is an ongoing and evolving thing. Feedback is super helpful and very, very important for me and what we're doing on this. So if you do have ideas, questions, things that you want to do, or images that you want reviewed on this, just like we did with these other ones, email me. You can just hit reply on any of the emails that are coming out, or get a hold of me via like Facebook, something fun like that. But ladies and gentlemen, that's officially a wrap for the evening. So thank you so much, everybody that submitted images, that joined, that had questions. I loved it. It's been fun hanging out.